We'll have a virtual flag.
In the boardroom?
There is there.
Now you gotta point that to the flag.
What do I have to do?
You gotta point the camera to the flag.
Point the camera
I
to the
can do
flag.
that. And we are on YouTube. We're ready to start.
You ready? There
There
you
you
go.
go.
There we go.
There you go. That's it.
And then you gotta put it back.
Well, oh, I see.
You
You're
gotta
over
move.
to the
Okay,
side.
beautiful.
I think we're all okay now. Okay. I'm calling the public session back to order. It's 4 o'clock. And the first thing will be to do a pledge of allegiance. And we have Sarah Chapoletti who's going to lead us. We'll all just, I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Everybody there with you, Sarah, knows that where the emergency exits are and that it's a smoke-free campus. So
Yes.
stay clear.
Okay.
Okay, I think the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from the April 29th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Nix, and a second by Mr. Parker. All in favor? I saw all hands raised, and so the minutes are approved. We have no public commentary, but there were some questions that came into the district clerk's office through email. Did you want to do that, Dr. Gianni? You've got the list here.
I'm not aware of it.
Oh, okay, well,
But I may have to be addressing some of them as
I can read this. I'll read this and then you can jump in if there's anything that you need to add. 4 inquiries, regarding the culinary trip to Disney and 1 regarding the school calendar. So addressing the trip to Disney, says that you're doing that in this section, but we'll talk about the school calendar during our discussion section. And currently all district meetings through April 1 have been canceled. That ought to be a later date, I think. Probably all district meetings were canceled, I think. Okay, so district meetings through, and all activities also are canceled for the remainder of the school year. And field trips have been either canceled or postponed. You said that we will reschedule any canceled meetings once school closure is ended, and we're working with the travel companies on trip refunds to Disney and to the Philly trip. So for the Philly trip,
We continue to try to make that contact and get those refunds.
and I think your notes said,
The culinary trip, while the refunds have not been done yet, they agreed for full refunds for everything. So the trip is going to be once we have flights.
okay. But your notes had also said for the Philly trip that there were 98 reservations made. 70 of them, the parents took insurance, so they're getting a full refund. That leaves
A
the
refund except for the 30 something.
$30,
Yeah.
the premium.
Right.
And so that leaves the 28 who did not take the insurance.
Correct.
And, okay,
Okay.
all right.
Is that all of the remarks you had from that?
That's with regard to that, yes.
Okay, so then can I get started with my report?
Well, we have one more thing,
Oh, go ahead.
and that is, board recognition.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
This is where,
I'm gonna take over for that.
pardon?
I'm gonna do that for you, Ann.
Okay, your
All right.
turn.
All right. We start off with some recognitions this evening. The first being the board service. The New York State School Boards Association offers a recognition program that is designed to provide school board members with professional development opportunities and acknowledge those who strive to continually expand their governance knowledge and skills. This school year, both trustees DeSanto and President Hayes have received the Level 1 Board Achievement Award, which includes a certificate of recognition. So, on behalf of our board and the New York State School Boards Association, we appreciate the additional time you've devoted in fulfilling your responsibilities and to our school and our learning community. Congratulations to you both. There are digital certificates available for you in your docs. I wish we were able to be there to take a picture with you, but unfortunately, this time does not
We're
permit.
gonna skip the pictures today, thank you. So congratulations.
I don't know if Ann is as disappointed as I am about not having to take a photo.
No, this worked out just fine, but, I also think it's timely to make that recognition of Lisa, because I think word out on the street now is that Lisa is completing her term and she's not renewing her term. And she's been a faithful board member for going on 10 years, is it, Lisa? And so you've brought a lot to this
Actually,
board
11,
during all the
counting.
Yeah, well, you can see I wasn't counting exactly, but I got it into pretty close.
Time
So
sure flies when you're having fun.
Thank you for that. Okay, next is superintendent's report.
Okay, I have a couple of items that I just want to report on and some of them even getting back to. First item, as the board knows, the budget vote and election is scheduled for June 9th by mail-in ballot as per the governor's executive order. We are in the process of mailing ballots to some 18,000 voters in the district at a cost of $7,000. Generally, we have about 1,800 folks vote per school year, so a significant amount of ballots are going out. Depending upon the number of ballots returned, postage and fees for return ballots could range anywhere from $2,000 to $11,000. Probably on the lower side because we don't expect to get all of the ballots back, but obviously it's a per cost as they come in because of postage. Just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. Guidelines in terms of counting the votes and protocols are kind of unclear at this point, but our plans are to move forward with our election expense.
Oh, just a minute, please.
Our election inspectors, et
Jack,
cetera.
can you take over?
Sure.
Okay.
And to move forward that way as advised by council. Next item is end-of-year grading protocols. As promised, our end-of-year grading protocols have been established, communicated to our families, and posted on our school's webpage. At the elementary level, students will not be penalized if they're experiencing barriers to connecting with the continuing learning plan. And work that is completed will support or improve the student's grade from the second semester. At the secondary level, fourth quarter grades will be calculated based on 4 possible grades a student can earn. based on grading bands. Students will be assigned one of these 4 grades based on a grading rubric that includes evidence of effort, assignment completion, and continuity of learning engagement. And more details are available on the website, and as I had mentioned, they have been communicated to our families. K-5 packets. There's been some questions as to packets piling up at some of the homes of our K-5 families. We put a system in place for dropping off the hard copy elementary packets that have been completed since school has been closed. Packets will be organized and prepared for our teacher review at a sometime later date. Moving up. There have been some questions regarding our moving up. So our administrative teams have been working on plans to celebrate our traditional moving ups for pre-K grades 3, 5, and 8 in a non-traditional way due to our current circumstances. I was part of one of their meetings this past Monday, and I believe all will be quite pleased with the plans, which will be memorable, and I believe the best solution given our current circumstances and social distancing requirements. And let me unmute you, because I muted you. There you go. I'll be talking about graduation plans later. I posted them in the items for discussion, but I thought that was something that had a little bit more reason to talk further. Field trip refunds, unfortunately, I have no further information regarding refunds for parents in connection to the 8th grade Philly trip. The vendor has simply been unresponsive, and we will continue to reach out until we do make that connection. And then school closure. As you know, schools are closed for the remainder of this academic school year. Whether we will be permitted to host our traditional summer school in July has yet to be determined by the governor. But we are prepared to offer summer school through our credit recovery on our digital platform for students who may need to recover those credits. Remote learning continues through the academic school year. As the board knows, our top priority has been to connect to the unconnected. We have been doing home visits, and some of the reasons for not connecting, we have learned, are students are away from home, parents are unable to get the student to work, laziness, and we are finding very few are a result of internet or device access. However, with regard to those, we have been reaching out to those not regularly connected, and will provide devices and support for internet access when and where needed. In terms of meals, we continue to distribute our meals to any student in the district and their siblings under age 18. We continue to distribute some 1,000 meals a day and 4,000 on the weekend. Next weekend, with Memorial Day on Monday, we will be delivering a 4-day supply on Friday, the 22nd, and then we start distribution on Tuesday, May 26th. And that is all I have. That's for a report. Are there any questions on the board?
I have a question. It was interesting in looking at the percentages that you put. I think it was the board updates of the ones who were connected and not connected. And I think it was practically 100% connection at the high school, and your lower percentages were in the elementary grades.
Yes, and at the high school, the numbers also seem higher. Will appear higher at times moving forward, because what we're doing is we're looking at the 4 core subjects, and we are putting the students on the list if they're not connected in 2 of the 4 subjects, right? So they could be connected that week, but not connected with a core, and still get on that week list. So we've basically made a connection with every student or family, but the consistency of the connection is the issue. And those that are falling off are the ones that we will continue to move and knock on doors to find out what's going on.
But it appears that the people that needed to go through Altice have been able to do that.
There are, yes. Well, there are still a couple that are having Wi-Fi challenges that will be assisting, but they are, it's a real low number. It's not what at least I had first been concerned about. I mean, most of the reasons I'm hearing from the in-person connections are not internet or device access. It's personal access on their part. Jacob Feedy had his hand up a couple of times.
No, I was just going to add to the comment about connectivity and knowing it's not a major issue as we thought, but I did, one day when you were out, Dr. Jen, I spoke to Mr. Smalls, and in speaking to some people in other districts, our Chromebooks have a Wi-Fi card in it, and they can connect to an Optimum hotspot without having their own, not having to have their own account. The problem is, according to Mr. Smalls in his research, there's not too many Optimum hotspots in our district. I think he said the only one was the Lowe's parking lot in East Patchogue. That was something that did surprise me, though, I have to say. I thought there would be more hotspots for Optimum in our community, so I wondered if we can kind of vet that through. But if it's not an issue, it's not an issue. But I think going forward, you know, if there is some sort of distance learning in our everyday as we move forward into next year, it is something that probably is going to be beneficial to some.
There are a few more hotspots. There is one, the library in Belport, the parking lot, that is, they have Wi-Fi there. And then one of the parks in North Belport, there's a hotspot there as well. So things are happening, it's positive.
Yeah, I think in some communities where I was going with that, because yeah, I did know about like the library and stuff like that, but in some communities, and I thought I could in my house and I can check, but I usually, there's you should be able to get it in your home if it's a big enough range. I mean, Optimum can do that. That's always been a topic, you know, with legislators, is how to bring Wi-Fi to all, right? Not just in public places, but if you're close enough to a signal, you should be able to sit home and get it. Some other districts have that. You know, obviously the makeup of the district, of the community has an impact on it. But wherever you can get an Optimum service, you should be able to sign in through our Chromebooks.
Yeah, we have to unlock that though. Right.
Yeah, understood. So, but I'm saying if we knew it, if somebody can get the Optimum, they don't have to go through the trouble and all the things that we discussed with Altice, with having to sign up after a certain amount of months and they had to pay a fee at some point, things like that. They shouldn't have to pay anything because they'd be signing in under our account if we authorize it to the Google Chromebook.
Right. That's correct.
Were they glad to get home visits?
Not everybody, no, not everyone.
Well, I hope the kids will have a little incentive to get online if they're the ones who were not doing it. You know, if there wasn't an impediment,
Yeah, some of
that would help.
Some of them were the kids and the parents also saying they can't get them on, you know. Everyone's got their own challenges, right? I'm not amazed any longer, but everybody's got a different challenge at home under this pandemic right now. You know?
Yeah. It's just a challenge being home all the time,
Yeah.
even if there's nobody else there with you, so. Okay, I think that was it for your report.
Yes.
Next would be trustee and advisory committee reports. Does anybody have anything they want to say? Not now. Okay,
And one thing is,
okay.
I happened to be home on Thursday, and I was thrilled to see one of the parades pass by my house. So thank you to the teachers in the community, as well as our fire department actually numerous fire departments that participated in the parade. It really is nice to see. It's
Okay.
a definite day brightener. So thank you to everyone in the community who's taken part in those activities.
Thank you for that. So next, Dr. Gianni's the budget presentation. You're doing that, aren't you?
I'm doing that. Are you ready?
Yes.
Because I'm just gonna open it up on my board docs, but you're gonna need to open it on yours as well. And we did put it into public, so the public can open it up. Okay, so, we have for you this evening budget presentation number 8. And it is an update on our expense and revenues. As we have presented last, this budget is calling for a 24.6 FTE decrease overall. That is no change from the last time that we spoke. The current budget plan continues to be program driven with no programs eliminated. Elementary class sizes are preserved with ranges from 17 to 23 per class. I think prior to this, we were at about 14 to 23 per class. No change in fine and performing arts or interscholastic athletics, and it continues to support our K-12 intervention programs with no reduction in support staff for next school year. So our challenges really haven't changed since we've been talking about the budget, our contractual obligations, transportation, increasing benefits, and BOCES. We have a tax cap levy limit of 2.1% or $1.3 million. Basically no foundation made, worries and concerns of a pandemic adjustment. And then, of course, whether or not we're going to have mid-year cuts next school year. So all real financial challenges and concerns that we do have. So we look at our revenues, not much has changed here with regard to our revenues, of course, because we have no additional information on state aid. We will note that we have added DRS contribution reserve of $550,000 at the bottom. If the board does choose to move with that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move down into the budget. Our expenditures have been reduced a bit, both as a result of the reduction in FTEs, some of the work we've been doing in transportation, and also some of the anticipation or assumptions that we're making with a couple of our bargaining groups, which the board is aware of. So the balanced budget, when you take a look at the revenues and the expenses together, we've moved our revenues to $138 million and balanced our expenses to the same number, leaving a gap. So leaving no gap. So how do we do that? Last time we talked about the possibility of designating $4 million in fund balance for next school year. We did 3.9 this school year. We are projecting that we will certainly be able to have that $4 million next year to be able to do that. Reserve appropriation of $950,000, which is $550,000 an increase of what we have done last year, and that is a result of what I mentioned earlier with the TRS reserve. And then the continuation of the debt service transfer, I believe this is year 4 of a 5-year plan of $600,000 going back to the community. So how did that happen? This is where it gets a little uncomfortable. So we closed the gap by removing $550,000 for pre-K transportation. We closed the gap by cutting our equipment budget to the bare minimum. I think we're going to have probably about $50,000 in district-wide equipment that we will purchase on a real as-need basis next school year. We are planning to tighten up on some of our vendor rates, particularly those that are coming from our special education services, and we do believe we'll be able to realize $100,000 savings from that. Transferred a position to grant for $83,000 and a district-wide supply reduction of 10%, bringing us to the 1 million there. And then with that 1 million, designating the fund balance at 4 million, the reserve appropriations, and that those reserves are workers' comp and ERS for 200,000 each, which we did last year, and then TRS for 550,000. Because we do anticipate being able to fund those based on our projected fund balance ending this year as a result of closing early, and as well as other efficiencies. Debt service transfer for $600,000. And as I mentioned earlier, this budget has the assumption of the two contracts that we talked about in executive session coming to fruition, and any further negotiations in transportation could realize additional savings. I'll jump right to the what ifs, because I'm sure someone's going to ask me what a contingency budget looks like. Obviously, we have some real concern about the budget, given it's a mail-in and mail-back, and there's mail-in to 18,000 folks. In the event of a failed budget, we would need to go to what's called the contingency budget, and what that means is we would need to reduce the current proposed spending plan by $1.3 million. So another devastating blow would be if we are not able to pass this budget. So questions on?
I do have some question. What, if we approve the budget, we're approving that bottom line figure of what we're going to present to the taxpayer as our proposed expenditures, and of that total amount, X dollars would be coming from the taxpayers?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because what the board ultimately does is approves the spending plan, and it's a number. It's not a what, right? Obviously, when we develop and present the budget, we tell you what it is. For the board's convenience, what I put in there, which is not necessary this evening, is the budget adoption resolution, right? So if you go into board docs and click on that, you'll see what, in fact, the board approves. And that is, the Board of Education hereby adopts an expenditure appropriation of $138,338,713 to operate the schools. So while I'm recommending to you how and what that number is going to look like, obviously it can change somewhat. We're talking about money, we're talking about how much, not what it is for. I don't know if I jumped ahead of you, but I thought that's what you were asking.
No, but you just teed it up so I could ask my next question. And that's because I noticed, and you did say, it showed taking away transportation for UPK.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to make this comment that I don't think that's a good idea if there's any way at all to keep it in there, because we've set up the UPK program now at South Haven. And I think it's going to take a good several years to know how much of a demand we're going to have from the families for the UPK services, and also having the transportation available just means there would be no reason for parents not to send their kids if they had a personal transportation problem. So I almost feel like we put all that money into South Haven this year to get it opened up and looking so nice. I don't want to kill the growth of that program in the first year by saying there won't be transportation. So based on what you said, that we're approving a number, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the first place to go when we spend money next year. We could go back and say, we need to trim some other expenditures.
Well, I would say this, so I think you have to move forward, with, this is the current plan. But I don't want to say that, remember, we may get some additional retirements that we didn't anticipate in this budget. We may be able to work with transportation. I think I mentioned to you, on the side, another conversation, that I was looking at, more regional stops to reduce the number of pre-K. And I think a combination of maybe some retirements, some efficiencies that we can think about, and a change in that UPK structure, we may be able to fund it, and we may be able to know that before we close the school year out. Unfortunately, by next Wednesday, we have to adopt the spending plan, so we can go to the voters. So I think the possibility of UPK transportation in some form is still possible, but I think we also need to know if all those assumptions and other items that we would hope for don't become reality, we may need to remove it. And Ms. DeSanto had her hand up, and I don't know if you noticed.
Okay.
As you know, I've always been a proponent of that transportation because the early education really is the key to the future of our district, and we're constantly talking about a keeping gap. And as President Hayes said, you know, we just did go through all the expense of opening up that pre-K center, and to now cut the transportation, we all know that it's our neediest students are going to be the ones who are not going to be able to get to the pre-K program. And so I really think it's incumbent upon us to find a way to do this. And as long as I've been sitting at the board table now, this is the 11th year, after we close out one budget and we look at our various budget categories, there's always been money left over. And it's been at least 500,000, if not more. That's how we set aside some of the reserves. And so I really think it's very short-sighted to pick that item. I really see it as a budget for the haves and forget about the have-nots. And that is really, actually really offensive to me at this point. I'm tired of that always having to be the first cut, so.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Parker, before getting to you? And that's because the TRS reserve appropriation of 550, does that have to be made this year or can it be made in a future year?
No, now, and that number is based on the anticipation of an increased collection of monies based on being closed. We're being closed. So we're gonna have an excess of money that we need to put into reserves next school year to stay within the 4%. And the plan would be to put that money in that reserve and to use that money to support our revenue side. So yes, well, the 550's gotta come somewhere in terms of revenue to balance the budget.
Okay, this is why I'm not an accountant, but the 550 would come in. Why couldn't it be used to take care of the UPK transportation, which coincidentally is 550, as opposed?
because it's already being used to balance the budget. So you'd have to find another 550 to make up for the 550 for UPCAC. And that's why I say, you know, once we get these MOAs done, maybe we'll have some additional retirements that were unplanned for that do not need to be filled, which means those are expenses reduced. And if those expenses come to the number of the 550 or close to it, then we can consider not eliminating UPCAP. And then again, as I mentioned to you, I believe that there's a way to reduce that 550 number, you know, to allow for transportation for those who do need it, to provide transportation to those who need it, those who do not, those who do need it and not those that do not need it, okay? And I think you could do that for regional stops. And I think we can make some savings. It's certainly not a $550,000 savings, though. But I think the combination of that and possible retirements that we can make transportation happen.
Is there any savings that could be had through the administrative staff expenditures
You need to cut a person? No.
or two,
No, or two. No.
or whatever it would take to get to 550?
Yeah, no, I would not recommend that at this time. But again, I don't want you to, I think we may be able to do something this school year. But right now, 550 needs to come from somewhere, absent knowing somewhere else. I think eventually we will know something else in the next couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, once these retirements come forward. I'm anticipating additional retirements based on the memorandum of agreements that we're preparing and talked about. And maybe they will equal and then your expense side is down, and it can be reallocated for that.
Mr. Parker, you had your hand up.
I did, one question has already been answered, but another question, Dr. Janet, would you just elaborate a little bit on the 1.3 million that we're looking at here in the event that the budget is not passed?
Well, I honestly, Mr. Parker, I can't. We would have to make some drastic cuts to lose the 1.3 million. I think you could look at some of the items that if you go back on the slide and the financial challenges in the beginning, right? And if it's a loan of 1.3 million, I wish I could tell you I could lop that off. That's not going to happen. You know, you're talking about people. The number we use on average is $80,000 a person. So do the math, and you'll see if you're looking to come up with 1.3 million, you have to lose that many folks, or program, which of course is tied to people.
So the 1.3 is tied to personnel or staff?
Well, the state will require us to take it from certain parts. They talk about the 3-part budget, and we will need to take pieces and balance within those. I don't know those off the top of my head, but I believe our next presentation shares the 3-part information. So I can't tell you right now what it would look like. But I will tell you that $1.3 million on this already trimmed budget will be devastating.
Ms. DeSanta?
I believe the question was asked at the last meeting, but I don't know if it ever got answered. Do we have a number on the savings that has been realized since we have been closed, or we haven't paid per diem subs? I don't think we'll have any custodial or security guard, overtime, things like that?
Yeah, we don't have an itemized number, but we're anticipating, $2 to $3 million to go into fund balance. And that will depend upon where we are with paying transportation or not.
So you included transportation in that number? Is that right?
So with paying transportation, it's probably 2.2 million. Without paying transportation, it was probably 3.1 million, like that.
Okay, so again, using those figures, on the low end, $2 million of savings realized because of having, not having overtime and other expenses since March. We can't use that, or you've already factored that in, so that we couldn't use that for the UPK transportation?
Well, part of that is factored into the TRS 550 number, but you need to remember that you need to think of this in terms of expenses, right, and revenues. So you really have to reduce your expenses, because sure, you can take part of that $2 to $3 million and pay for transportation, but then what are you going to do next year, the following year? You gotta look at it in terms of an expense and a planned spending plan. You can't look at it as let me throw money and you take care of it, because what you're doing is kicking the can down the road. You're just gonna have it again. The best way to do it is to reduce your expenses. And as I mentioned, I mean, we have some opportunities that are coming forward that we may be able to reduce those expenses through retirements. And I think that's what we have to look at and hope for, be able to fund that for some version of it.
Let me ask you a question. Have we thought about a contingency plan in the event that schools do not open in September?
We are beginning planning for an opening or not opening for next school year. Quite frankly, we've been focusing on the budget. Once the budget is adopted, then we're going to start turning our attention to passing that budget and what September might look like.
So if we approve the budget, is there any way we can have something that would be binding on the board and the administration, so that the first money that gets freed up could be used for UPK transportation?
The board just needs to tell me to do that. You don't need anything binding. Just tell me that's what you want. And when we incur those efficiencies, I will keep you apprised of what they are, how much they are, and we'll move forward accordingly. Listen, I did not want to make the recommendation of UPK leaving. If you recall, when we went to South Haven, I was one of the folks that said we needed the transportation because it was at the very end of our district. And I truly would like to offer it to the UPK program. We're just at a very difficult budget situation here, and we have made an exhaustive amount of cuts already. And if we do find those efficiencies or those savings through retirements, I would be more than happy to designate them towards UPK first. If the board's, if that's the board's desire.
Mr. Cheney?
I guess my only comment here, and I guess my thoughts on pre-K busing are very well known over the years. I just don't see how we could even consider spending that kind of money on something. We don't really have any data that says it increases or decreases participation, right? I mean, and you know, it's just a luxury. I don't see how we can afford it on what is probably going to be the biggest economic downturn in our country's history. To spend it $550,000 to bus kids back and forth for half a day of school, I mean, I firmly believe that the thought process that transportation isn't available for the students attending South Haven, I don't believe that's an issue, I really don't. I just think that if there's a downturn, and this is my opinion, that they choose to go somewhere else, and that some people may opt in because of busing, but if they don't, well, they can go to another program or something that's more convenient for them. But we've never seen a fluctuation so extraordinary when we did and didn't have busing, knowing that it's a small sample size. So, because I could drive through my neighborhood and follow the pre-K bus, and I see all the parents standing at the bus stop in their car waiting to pick up their kids. And that's only certain neighborhoods, and I get it, but there's just no indication that transportation is an issue getting to and from the program.
Well, I want to just comment about a couple things that you said, because I know from talking to you for a long time that we have a difference of opinion about this. But there's no way that we can consider this to be a luxury, even though you're correct that in terms of the economic downturn that we're facing, it's going to be monumental. Something that we've never seen in our lifetime. But I don't think it's a luxury, and I don't think it's a luxury when you look at the program as one where we've been trying to use it as an investment in our youngest kids to get them up to speed so that when they do come into the public system, there won't be the need for remediation and so forth. So that's where I differ from you. I also think that when you do a startup business, you need some amount of time to see whether it's going to work or not. And 1 year's not been enough for that. So, Mr. Parker.
I agree with what you said, and I think, Chris, even though I hear you, and you're right, it is a lot of money, especially if we're looking at possible cuts. But for those people who can afford to drive their kids back and forth to school, it's a great thing. But I wouldn't write it off as being quite as negative. It's disappointing. I agree with Ms. Santos that, something that we just invested a lot of time and money in, and now we're looking at eventually having it just evaporate overnight. And I wouldn't take it off of the list now. I just leave it on. I'd love to be, there's still a lot of kids who can't. Maybe it's a good idea to find out how many kids would need the public transportation. And maybe go from that angle versus just to eliminate it altogether.
Dr. Gianni, the UPK is a grant program from the state, and I believe it's about $625,000 per year.
Yes.
And it's a grant. It's not to be used for mandatory public education, which would be, I think, grade 1 up. So with the grant funding, if you used the grant to cover the busing, you'd have a little bit of money left over to run 2 sessions if it were a CBO that was providing the service.
Well,
you consider
I don't believe you could use the grant to support the transportation of the residents. But are you asking something else about the CBO? Because I know.
But I was just doing the arithmetic, saying that it would be, if it could be used for transportation, there'd still be enough money left over to run a morning and an afternoon session. And you may or may not be able to do that at the district level because of, the district salaries, but a CBO probably could do it. But my understanding had been that you can't use taxpayer dollars to pay for expenses that aren't mandatory. So I could be misinformed about that.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, because I don't believe it was the grant for the buses. The way, the way you can, save money, for the UPK program is to, the teachers, the full teacher salaries are not assigned to the grant, they're coming out of the house. And I think I mentioned this to you, a meeting or two ago. Another savings is to go all CBO. And all CBO would require, three folks excess. And that's why I did not go down that route, at this point, because we were already into the excess list.
Jimmy,
So I'm sorry, I think the question is whether or not the transportation for UPK is an ordinary contingent expense.
Okay. And is it?
It's,
Yeah, probably not, right?
it is authorized by statute, but it's not mandatory. So it's not an ordinary contingent expense, so you can transfer monies from non-contingent expense into ordinary contingent expenses, but not necessarily vice versa. So if you're setting up your budget and the money for the transportation is not in the budget, putting it back in the budget based upon savings in other places may raise an issue.
And does the grant money that we've been getting show up anywhere as revenue here?
No, it does not.
But could it be shown as revenue? And then that would give us 550,000 to leave in on, can't do that?
No, I don't think you can do that.
Dr. Yanni, I have a question. I know at the school there is the buses run under normal circumstances from morning until what time? Is it 3?
Probably around there, I'm not sure.
Okay, now I'm not including.
Are you talking about UPK though?
Right.
Because they run on 4 cycles, right? So there's a drop off, there's an afternoon pickup, there's an afternoon drop off, and then there's the second afternoon drop. Because you have that full day and a half day programs in there.
Right, and so I was looking at possible, do you know offhand the cost between the morning drop-off and the afternoon drop-off? Because a lot of people are selecting to have their kids in the afternoon program or stay late as a babysitting possibility, whereas that, meaning the buses would come again after the kids have already gone home. For the few kids who are staying for the afternoon programs. Do you have?
No, we don't have afternoon programs at UPK.
Oh, you don't?
A full dismissal, yeah, it's a full dismissal afterwards.
Okay, and after the full dismissal, there's some parents who elect to have their kids in a after-school workshop or something there?
Not at the pre-K center, no.
For kindergarten and elementary at Brookhaven, right?
Kindergarten, K to 3 have an after-school enrichment program, UPK does not.
Okay, good.
So this go aftercare?
Yeah. No, we started it through the CBO, but it was not attended.
And do you know how many of our students use the buses?
Pardon me?
Do you know how many of our students?
About 8%. Yeah, we have a good amount using the buses. There's no doubt about that. What's that?
What was the percentage?
80%, probably 85%, depending on the day. But it's a good percentage, you know, I'm not gonna argue with that.
80% is pretty.
It's pretty good, sure. Listen, again, I think I hear the board. Unfortunately, it's really about expenses. I would suggest that, let's see, what efficiencies that we may get or expense savings we may get through retirements, that we have not planned for, that may come forward. I don't know if we have to make that decision this minute. Ultimately, you will have to adopt a budget and a spending plan, which needs to be next Wednesday. I can certainly walk away understanding that you would like to put UPK transportation back in. And I will keep that at the top of my list to do that as we move forward.
I was under the understanding that we needed to adopt the dollar figure, the 138 million and change tonight, so that Christine can get the mailings out in time.
Now, as long as the board, my understanding is the board does not want to pay the cap, the tax levy cap. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
Nobody here, right? I'm picking that up from prior discussions, but let me see. Does anybody want to try to pierce the cap? I don't, because then we've got to have a 60% approval.
And so then, as a result, I'm hearing that the board is in support of a budget of $138,330,713. Is that accurate?
It is for me.
Okay, that's the only number Christine needs to begin to do her planning,
All right.
or printing rather. And if the board is in agreement that you are going to adopt the budget with that number next Wednesday, tomorrow morning, Christine and her helpers can begin printing the documents that need to go out.
Okay, and then that gives us to the next Wednesday.
Even further, Ann, even further than Wednesday. Because remember, you're approving the number, not necessarily what it is. We may get 6 retirements. We may get those numbers that tally that 550 number. And then I would come back and tell you we've gotten this money, and that has reduced our expenses by this much. Would you like me to put this back in? And the board can make the decision at that time. And it doesn't need to be next Wednesday. It could be any time until we leave in June.
Mr. Ruda?
And I think the bottom line is that we don't know what school will look like in September, what it's visually going to look like, and where some of those monies may need to be moved around. We don't know at this time what that's going to look like. So there may be things that we're looking at right now that might need to be changed by then. And we're not going to probably know that until the summertime. There's, the vision of what we know as a typical school system and a typical budget, I don't anticipate that happening come September. I do think that there's going to be a lot of changes in the way that the traditional school system looks. So there are going to be things moved around. So I just, obviously we need to look at the number and we need to approve the number. But I do think there's going to be a lot of shifting around of different things because I don't think that school's going to look the same in September.
That's a fair assessment, I think.
I'm okay with the number, the 138 million and change. And we have a firm understanding about what we would like our priorities to be if we're in a position of actually having brick and mortar preschool next year, along with, any transportation that would be associated with it.
We might have any transportation next year.
We may not,
In the school.
for anybody. We don't know.
Okay.
Do you need us to?
No, I don't need anything. I wanted to present. I mean, we didn't announce this as an adoption meeting, so, I don't even know if we can legally do that. I just assume adopt next. I mean, John, can we? Did you want to get them?
So you can adopt the resolution. It does not require a specific, the hearing is, the budget hearing is when you present your budget as adopted to the voters. Budget adoption does not require any other specific notice.
Sounds like you can adopt tonight if you want.
I think we should.
I think because our clerk is really deluged with a lot of extra work that, again, was unanticipated because of the circumstances. So, Ms. Aruda.
Quick, easy fix on the resolution, my last name is spelled incorrectly.
All right.
Not a big deal, I just, if we're gonna be adopting and I just want you to be aware.
Christine, you need to fix that. You can hear us. All right, do you want to move forward? Because in that case, I will read the resolution and then, or you make the motion and then I'll read the resolution. Or no, I read the resolution.
I think you have to read it first.
Okay. Christine Flynn, I know you could hear me out there. I guess you can make the adjustment later with regard to an action item on this. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby adopts an expenditure appropriation of $138,330,713 to operate the schools for the 2020-2021 fiscal year and to present such appropriation to the residents for approval on June 9th, 2020. And then I will read the folks off individually. It has to be a roll call vote. Ms. Aruda?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Santo? And you're muted and I don't see where. Mr. Santo?
No.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Puccini?
Yes.
Mr. Trent?
Yes.
Mr. Nix?
Yes.
And Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
So we have 6 yeas and 1 no. Please record that, Ms. Flynn. Okay. Well, I wonder if we, next item is the board calendar. I have an adoption added for next week. I don't know if the board still wants to do that. I'll leave that up to you. Next item for discussion is the calendar. I made some recommended revisions to the calendar based on the board's consideration, based on budget, vote, and election information and guidance. So I initially planned to add Wednesday meeting for adoption, but you just adopted it, so it's not necessary. The next meeting after that is already scheduled, May 27th, as a business meeting, and I plan to do the budget hearing at that date as well. And then, obviously, we need to add June 9th, 2020 as the budget vote and election. So I offer that for the board's consideration and discussion.
I think we should keep the meeting in for 2 reasons. Number one, it gives us another opportunity to see what efficiencies have been found in the 7 days that you have till we come back. And the other reason is to be able to hear any updates about guidance from the state commissioner with regard to plans for summer school and September.
I'm fine with that. Just recognize that it will not be a very big agenda, but I'm fine with it. Is that good with everyone? I mean, I would just then change the, meeting to read, not a budget adoption, just a business meeting. It would just be a business meeting, and I'll report on what you asked, Ann.
Okay, thank you.
So then I offer that for the board's consideration. I'm changing May 20th to a business meeting. In addition, May 27th, you know what, before I do this, Mr. Sheehan, what's the time frame for the hearing? Is it whenever, or do I have?
No, there's a specific time frame.
So can I do that on the 20th?
No, we haven't.
No, Dr. Jones.
No, it's gotta be the 27th.
May 26th and June 7th.
20, I'm sorry, say that again, Christine?
Between May 26th
And-
and June 7th.
Okay, so we can't do the hearing. I think Christine's reading from council's guidance between May 26th, no, May 26th and June 7th, so we have to go with the 27th, right? Is that what you're saying? Okay,
Yeah, May 26th, June 2nd.
June 2nd, okay. All right, so we gotta leave the hearing on the 27th.
Okay.
So, recommend the addition of May 20th for a business meeting, having the budget hearing on May 27th, and the addition of the budget vote and election on June 9th. Does Ms. Hayes have a motion?
I need one motion.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Parker made the motion to agree to that, and I need a second. Mr. Trent, any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? I see everybody's hand except Mr. Nix. Are you voting yes or no?
You're muted, Mr. Nick.
Hello,
Is that a yes, Jack?
Jack? Jack?
He's muted.
No, he's mute sounded.
Hello, Jack? No, this may be where he's doing.
Oh, he may be
at
out, he
once.
may have stepped away. He may have stepped
But he's
away.
there. It shows he's muted.
Yeah, I know.
He's probably not listening because he's got
I
he's
can't
probably
get
doing his
his
call.
attention. Yeah. Okay, look, this is for the calendar. I've got 1, 2, 3,
You have enough votes.
6 in favor and 1 abstain.
Okay. All right, thank you. Oh, okay, now, before moving on to the next item, I wanted to share my plans for the upcoming snow days previously designated for May 22nd and Tuesday, May 26th. As you know, the governor's executive order has put the district in a bit of a quandary as his order continues to require school districts who first use any vacation or snow days to be eligible for a waiver of the 100-day instruction requirement. As a result, remote learning needs to continue during the extended closure, including May 22nd and Tuesday, May 26th. My plan is to designate those 2 days as social emotional days, where no assignments or work can be given and all faculty and staff will be offline. Our remote learning site will continue to be open and available for families with suggested social-emotional activities if they so choose to visit the site. However, my recommendation is going to be to simply shut off the computer, put down the packets, so students, their families, and our faculty and staff can take some time for their own social emotional wellness. This new normal has been simply exhausting for everyone, and we need some time for our own mental health. I believe this designation follows the governor's orders and is certainly within my role to designate such days. But I am interested in the board's thoughts before I make that designation. Mr. Ticini?
Oh, I have a couple of quick things on the calendar, but I'm confused about, you know, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we really shouldn't be in an issue of the 180 days if you count the distance learning days, right? Do the days of distance learning count towards your 180 days?
Yeah, the problem is the days open and the contractual requirement, right?
And that's what I was gonna get at as well. I don't mean to cut you off, but like, I don't understand why, if we didn't have any days off, why we can't have days off that were already scheduled, and the distance learning days are like we were in school. The way this is shaping up, the way it looks to me is that kids, if distance learning counts as the same as if you were in school towards 180 days, kids are gonna be learning for more than 180 days.
Yeah, accurate.
Yeah, so, I mean, is that the governor's directive? Because that's not the way I really understood it. I mean, I know it's fast and loose, and he's very short on specifics to some extent,
Yeah.
but it just seems like they're doing more work, even though it's different and it's not the same as being in person. They haven't had any days off. And I guess one of the other questions after the calendar is that some districts, I know my wife's district is one of them, where they've designated a day where no work is assigned and it's a catch-up day. So how are districts able to do that? And-
Well, I think that's still a distant learning day, right? So it's still a distant.
Yeah, so I mean, I get, so then let me ask you this way then. Your plan for social emotional days on the 22nd and the 26th, why wouldn't we incorporate more of those if we felt that it would, or more days where there's less new instruction being assigned? Granted that our faculty and staff believes that that's okay. I don't know, I'm living it with 3 kids, right? Every day, kids need a break. There's a reason there's so many breaks in school, right? And understanding it's different, it just seems like it's a lot much, and I don't understand why we can't have days off.
But most of that is out of our control anyway, so the governor's made a decision. I don't know why I don't know why it's something that we are debating.
Because I don't believe that the governor did make that, that's my point, right? I mean,
Yeah, you don't believe the government made it?
No,
I don't,
the governor's executive order clearly said
Yeah, do you want me to,
vacation days must be exhausted.
yeah, no, but I get that point. I know John wants to jump in. I guess I want to clarify my point. So does the executive order say that we have to have more than 180 days of instruction, including what was in person prior to the shutdown and the distance learning?
No, the executive order says you must exhaust those days in order to be eligible for the 180-day waiver requirement.
But that's my point. If I'm correct then, if you're saying we have to have 180 days of learning, including distance learning and regular, we're going to run out sometime in the middle of June of days. We're going to reach that 180 if you count them all, don't you think?
No, I think the governor's intention is for you to have it more than 180 days.
And that's what I'm trying to clarify.
yeah, so let's be clear. In terms of what the executive orders intend or don't intend. The initial intent, when they first came out, was clear in that schools were obligated to use the recess period for instruction, and SED came out with guidance at that time that you were to continue the distance learning for each day over that recess period. I don't think it was anticipated that this COVID-19 closure would extend to the end of the school year. What the later executive order said, they did not reference specifically recess days or vacation days. What they said was that distance learning options were to continue. My interpretation of that is consistent with the MOA that the district has then entered into, that your calendar, for all intents and purposes, is no longer what you're going by, now your distance learning plans. And your distance learning plans should be, those options should be available. So what Dr. Gianni is putting forth, I think, is consistent with those executive orders saying that distance learning options will continue. However, teachers and students will be provided mental health days, and days off will be provided from now until the end of the school year.
Has our distance learning plan been approved so that we qualified for the 180 days?
Yeah, all the learning plans were sent back for additional information, and we provided that and sent it back. It's submitted, and it has not been unsubmitted, so as far as we know, we're approved, yes.
Good. I guess I'm still, I don't want to say I'm confused, I get it, but basically what you're saying is that as long as we have stuff available for kids to do, even if it's optional, it counts as distance learning, correct?
I'm saying is that right now, all the executive order says is that you're required to keep your existing distance learning options available. That's what it says. It doesn't prescribe necessarily day to day or what manner that will be continuing from now until the end of the school year.
Correct, so I can interpret that as if we said we wanted to give the kids tomorrow off, let's just say as hypothetical, but there's work up there if you want to do it, but it's not going to be graded and you don't have to do it. That still counts as distance learning based on the governor's order, correct?
I think that's consistent with the governor's order, yeah.
So then that tells me that it's incumbent on us to say if we want to make certain days optional, similar to what some neighboring districts are doing, whereas, for example, I'll use my wife's district, Wednesday is catch-up day. So it might not be new work assigned or you know, and I believe my wife's running notes, I think it's art, music, and specials are on that day. All right, I got it. So we should be able to do that, and because the next question I'm gonna have is, at some point, we're gonna run out of contractual days for our teachers, and I know we did the online, offline days. Are you saying that we're gonna run out of we're gonna get to 180 days at the last day of school as if the calendar was unaffected by distance learning?
Right now, we're unaffected by distant learning based on the contract. 180 days. Based on the contract and the online, offline days we did in April. If you remember, we talked about it, and you gave me your authority to make those adjustments. I made those adjustments. We are now within the contract. If we don't go offline on those 2 days, we're 2 days over.
Okay, so all I'm getting at is now, we've spent time to make sure that we don't go over the 180 days based on a teacher contract. I'm just telling you the kids need a break somewhere to say, this is optional this day. And that really, I don't think has happened, or if it has, and that's an intention, it hasn't been made clear.
Okay, so if you remember, we provided guidelines some time ago, which are currently on the website, which I'm currently looking at. Grades 3 to 6 on Fridays, there's no core activity going on. Every Friday, only art, music, and library is a lesson there. So there is relief every single week.
So, all right, so I want to clarify this because with two kids in 4th grade, you're saying to me that every bit of work that teachers are assigning on Friday is optional now. And I can guarantee our staff doesn't realize that.
Well, some folks are reading challenged, I guess.
No,
go right to the website and and pull it up, I'm looking at it right here.
No, and I don't debate it, but there's so many things that come out, like, again, I got 2 fourth graders, so I'm confused. I want to clarify and make it very, very clear. Friday's work is not to be graded. If they don't do it, it doesn't work against them.
I
And
think.
basically, it's optional.
But no, I'm not gonna say that particularly publicly.
Okay.
Then what I'm saying is you should review what's up on the website. Work is generally given on a weekly basis, and students need to complete it during the.
I'm just telling you, my kids get assignments the morning of each day. And they have a day's worth of work each day. And I can't speak for every teacher, I can only go on experience. And they've done a wonderful job of managing it and creating checklists of what's gotta be done and how it's done. But there's work on Fridays, and the anticipation, unless I've completely missed this, and it's possible that there's work on Fridays, which you're saying isn't exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Mr. Rudin? You have your hand up.
I think when it comes to the distance learning, we're looking at it more from a day-to-day rather than what we kind of should be looking at is the suggested hours that a student should work. Because when we're saying a day-to-day, you're taking it as a Monday through Friday. Not all of our children are working Monday through Friday. Some of them take the option to work on Saturdays and Sundays because that's when mom or dad is there to help them. So far, when it's come to quote-unquote due dates, I feel as though our staff has been wonderful with understanding if something wasn't there on time or a little bit later. Because I've had parents even reach out to me like, this is due Friday, but I really want to work with them on a Saturday. And every teacher has been so understanding with that. And this is not something that anybody plans for, and we understand. I mean, my daughter alone, she met her teacher at 4:30 this morning. I then, when I woke up, apologized to her because this isn't typical. The children should be working for a certain amount of hours. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be completely Monday through Friday. Some of them choose to work on a Saturday or Sunday because they're there. So I think what we're getting to is the idea of taking those social emotional days and kind of setting aside, saying it's time to close up. Everybody needs to shut down a little bit. I know for myself, Chris, when I assign my work, I assign, and I do have a catch-up Friday because I assign Monday through Thursday with a certain time frame of about 3 hours of instructional work that they're working on. Sometimes they only work for about 2 hours, so they choose to use their Friday as that working time, or they choose to then do whatever additional actual assignments. So it's not gonna look perfect and in the same form for every single child.
Can I ask a question first, because I'm trying to make this easier for me to understand.
Sure.
Dr. Chiani, are you saying that if we have these mental health days, as you're suggesting, we'll still be in line with what the governor's executive order told us to do, and in line with the BTA contract, so that we're okay? So why would we want to offer that to our staff and to the families? And I think the days you're suggesting are right around the Memorial Day weekend, aren't they?
It's basically giving them the vacation that they haven't already been given.
Okay, Mr. Pichtin.
Yes, my point to answer Melissa is that I get what you're saying, and none of my kids' teachers are stringent if you didn't hand in Monday's work on Monday, because my kids aren't completely on time, because different things happen on different days. If they need my help, Monday's work might be getting turned in on Wednesday, and nobody's being strict about that. My point is, there's new work being assigned every single day, Monday through Friday. What I think I heard Dr. Gianni say was that Friday was a catch-up day, and there doesn't necessarily have to be, or shouldn't be, new work assigned on Friday, based on what you read on the district website. I'm not reading out of it in front of me, but is that accurate?
I'm going to break that out and say that what your point is probably better be answered through the curriculum and instruction branch of our district, the individual teachers. And what we're being called upon to do is say whether or not it's all right to have the 2 mental health days added to the Memorial Day weekend. and we're being told that we can do that and still be in compliance with the executive order and with the days to be worked by the BTA.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is that I'm a parent and a board member, and I'm confused, which means there's a lot of other people who are confused, and I'm trying to understand where the kids get, and I'm not, a break, a little bit of relief, because it's every single day, and I'm living it every day, that's just like many other parents of small children, so I'm trying to make sure we can clarify it, because based on something Dr. Gianni said about Fridays is new to me, and I'm a board member, and I'm a parent of 3 kids. So I think it's worthy to be clarified, that's all.
I'm looking at the document is quite clear, but it has to do with teacher availability, okay? So yes, assignments can be given, and in grades pre-K to 2, the guideline is 2 to 2.5 hours per day. So yes, an assignment could happen on a Friday.
Okay, so that's different from the way it was framed before, at least how I interpreted it. So there's new work being given every day. So now I go back to my original question is, when do the kids get a break other than the 22nd and the 6th from getting new work? Because because technically, with everything else they're living with and all the fears and stresses of what's happening in our world right now, they're getting work, and some of it's good and that's great, but it's not easy for everybody. And some people are struggling, and some kids just want to wake up on a sunny day like today and not have to worry about schoolwork and enjoy being a kid. That's what I'm getting at. We talk about the social emotional health of our children. A day off from schoolwork, every now and then should be warranted. And the reason the question was brought up is because based on our calendar, technically our kids will work longer than 180 days. I wanted to clarify that.
But I think
I would just want to recommend that if this is something that would be considered by the superintendent, that this be worked out, looked at by the superintendent. Right now, the superintendent is looking at something that's approved by the education department. And it has been approved, and so based on the approval, you're working under the assumption that each day authorized by that plan is authorized towards your 180 days. And that is critical with respect to your state aid. The 180 days and your contractual limits in terms of teaching days are the days that I think are under the consideration right now and should be the focus.
Okay, I don't want to spend any more time on it. I'm still a little frustrated and confused. I'll just deal with it offline.
I understand what you're saying, Chris, and I believe me, I do understand the fact that the kids do need the break. I feel like we are in the home stretch right now. They definitely need those breaks. I would personally like for some of the plans to incorporate a little bit more of the social and emotional. We talked earlier today about those that are connecting and those that are not connecting, and from some of the reasons why they're not. I know for myself, and even for my own children, it's time to get creative in how we're getting our children to continue to work. It is a lot. I feel your pain each and every day. This is a lot for a lot of families, some more than others. We do need to get a little creative in what we are putting out to our children. And in that creativity can be that break that you're speaking about. I do think that we can make it, if we're gonna shave off days, I would love to see that be towards the end, whether it's June 26th is supposed to be our end day. I'd like to see more June 19th, right there. Let's take our social emotional days, and if we're shaving off days and we're giving it a break, let's give it then. And kind of get ingenious in what we're doing now with our distance learning.
So do you need us to approve the?
No, I think it's
Okay.
still my authority. I just wanted to get some feedback, and I've gotten a lot of fluid feedback. So I'm gonna move on to.
Helpful feedback, so you know.
Very helpful feedback, yes.
All right.
I'm gonna move on.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the next item for discussion is plans for high school graduation. Mr. Hogan and his team, with input from senior advisors, senior representatives, have been hard work planning the graduation ceremony that, while not a traditional ceremony, will no doubt be memorable and the best solution given our current circumstances and social distancing requirements. Now, I'm going to briefly go over this with you. I prepared it and given it to you in detail. But before the meeting, Mr. Hogan did indicate to me that some of the folks, particularly the kids, have not seen the final plans and he would like to share it with them. So I'm gonna just talk about it very briefly, but I know the board was interested in the plan, so I wanted to share that with them, okay? If you don't mind, you'll see I'm skipping around a bit. So the graduation ceremony will be held on Thursday, June 25th, as originally scheduled, and with a rain date of the 26th, Friday the 26th. There is a plan for a parade, processional, with one graduate / family per car. So it'll be a vehicle parade processional that will start at the middle school for organization purposes and then move to the high school. And at the high school, we will be arranging these cars on one of the fields with a podium and a ceremony and a big screen for being able to project our graduates. We will be able to connect to everybody via the FM radio through a company that we are working with. Of course, flowers, plants, etc. will be done up very nicely to make the area festive. We will do live speeches that are typical for Mr. Hogan, Val, Sal, and essayists, as well as myself with certifying the graduates and Ms. Hayes in terms of moving the tassel. And then we will proceed to a recessional where the cars do leave. I think it's going to be really nice. Certainly it's not going to be your traditional graduation where the kids walk across the stage, but it will certainly be memorable and give everyone an opportunity to participate. And interestingly enough, one of my first questions was about folks without rotation. And the school reached out and Lyft Services has agreed to donate 30 cars and 30 drivers for students who might not have transportation.
Oh, good.
So everyone will be able to participate in this ceremony if they so choose. And I was really excited about seeing it. And in terms of the time, it certainly is not going to be the time that it was normally. It'll probably be a little later because of the need for darkness on the field. But I was pretty happy. Comments without letting too much out of the bag, but
It's probably a silly question, but what happens if there's a fender bender while the vehicles are going to or coming from the field?
they don't graduate.
They don't graduate.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll have to have some cars in there or something.
It's like assumption of the risk.
Okay, move on to the next item.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so our final item for discussion and action is the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association proposed 2020-21 budget and proposed 2020-2021 slate of officers and members of the executive committee. Those items are in board docs for your review, and I offer for the board's consideration and action. Also, I think I rewrote the resolutions in there for you as well.
Okay, I'm going to need a motion to approve the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association proposed budget for the 2020 to 2021 school year. I have Mr. Piccini and Ms. DeSanto second. Questions or discussions? Seeing none, all in favor? Let's see, there are 5 in favor and there are 2 who are not present for the vote. And then also we need a motion to approve the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association proposed slate of officers and members of the executive committee for 2020 through 2021. Again, a motion, Mr. Piccini, and a second by Mr. Trent. Any discussion or questions? None. All in favor? 5 in favor and who are not present for the vote.
Aye.
You missed out on an opportunity to vote.
I heard. I did vote. You didn't hear me.
Oh, okay. All right, we want to correct that. We have make that 6 in favor of both motions and 1 absent for both motions.
Okay, move on to consent items.
Yes.
Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and G2.
All right, is there a motion to approve Mr. Parker, second by
Nobody.
Ms. Aruda? Any discussion or questions? None. All in favor? 6 in favor, 1 absent for the vote.
And administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 and H2.
There a motion to approve the personnel changes shown in H1 and H2. Mr. Trent, second by Ms. Aruda.
A quick question.
Wait, she has to second it first. Did you second it? Okay. Now you can ask your question.
Dr. Johnny, so the students, these are guidance counselors for the summer?
Yes.
So I guess the current guidance counselor, my question is, the students are making appointments to speak to the guidance counselor currently?
Yeah, they're virtually, they're live. They're meeting, our guidance staff are meeting with every one of their assignments.
Just for clarity, like my son had his, they're doing a great job, by the way, on these video meetings.
So are they reaching out to students, or is it just the students reaching out to them?
No, I think it's both. I think they're definitely making contact with the seniors, obviously, but they are reaching out for everyone. I think Mr. Ruda has her hand up too.
Yes, and the summer guidance counselors, I'm assuming that's for scheduling and things along those lines.
They're sort of preparing for the new school year, but also for connecting with.
Social emotional.
Early in the shutdown, to answer Karen's question, all of the junior class was contacted, and if there was appointments being made for college planning, everybody in the class was contacted about that, and meetings ended up, because they couldn't happen in person, happened virtually.
Okay. So, we have the motion already made and seconded for H1 and H2. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Next.
Moving on to business, the administration recommends approval of business item I1.
Is there a motion to approve business item I1? Mr. Trent? Mr. Pacini made the motion. Who would like to second it? Okay, Ms. Saruda. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimously approved. I think that's it, isn't it, Dr. Chiani?
Yes, ma'am, that is all I have for you.
All right, and do we have any closing remarks by any of the? Yes, Ms. Saruda.
Just make it very quick, I want to thank Mr. Watson, he set up a classroom for the 8th grade, I know a lot of the principals have, and some of the motivational, things that he's been placing on there, and just some information for the 8th grade class has been really nice, especially since he's there last year here. So I just want to publicly thank him for doing that, and I think it means a lot to the children and to the families.
Thank you. Any other feedback from anybody? I'll just pass on a comment I got from the mother of 2 students, one in high school and one in middle school. And I was talking to her about how they found the online learning and the interaction with the teachers to be going. And she had a very favorable reaction to that. But here's the quote, and I think we ought to save this. She said that she's proud to be part of this district. So I think we should use that as the example of what everybody is striving toward, in order that everybody can feel proud to be part of the district. And, you know, the fact that we've prevailed or we've plugged right along, even in these difficult circumstances. Okay. Any other comments? No? All right, how about the motion to adjourn? Mr. Trent, and a second, I think, Ms. Aruda, and all in favor? It's unanimous, we're adjourned. Be safe, everyone, be well and be safe.
See you next week.